Yeah, so I wanted on the floor since this I just reminded me the art, art. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just depends on what the purpose is. So for me, it wasn't necessarily so. For me, it was more about. It's actually a performance piece. It's not necessarily the final thing. It's watching the video. It wasn't in a gallery. It was the video. It was the experience. And the initial motivation behind it was to do something that's awesome. People will look at it and go, oh, will take a statement and it'll provoke a bunch of people. And it did. For a great reason in America. Guys, people saw that. But now they're doing it. That's in itself. I work with them quite a lot. And feel that specifically my motivation. I work with them. Can you recommend me I would rather see several. Yeah, I know honestly it's something I can look at online myself. I mean, Procreate is one of the best developers to do. And the handbook is, I understand that it's tools, it's what tools do. Honestly, it's a very big barrier. That's why they have well, there is a barrier, but it's not as big of a barrier as I show you it's notice that it's simple. Just because you use your finger, it makes it simple. So there's a level of complexity that makes the engine a lot easier. They don't need to know. I've had a problem and always a brush, you can draw something. It isn't. It's only when you get really into it that you want to do some specific things. That's where practicing and experimentation. Honestly, no one taught me. It's not because I'm born with this thing. I just spend a lot of time on it. I understand generational technology and all my things. That's essentially what I do every day. You get me back. Here's what we call stylists. Thank you. How did yours go? Yeah, I got caught with Jeremy. We went looking at a museum and hours later. Yeah, we did.
How about break? And start.
Good morning, everyone. How are you guys doing? How are you doing? Good. Yeah, stand up. Everyone, let's dance. Dance, I guess. I know.
Okay. Well, I don't need mic. Oh. So we are ready. This is the day 2 for the conference. Some new faces. We are very excited for the new people attending today. Before we get started, I have some announcement. There is a person they have a car where I think the mirrors are open.
No, the door.
The door is open.
The window's open.
Okay. The blue car, the number is 7PPT374. Make sure it's not your car. All right. Then, so we're doing pretty awesome with the conference. I just want to do a sales pitch. So we did this nice T-shirt. It says "I love mobile art." We have lots of them available for you just for $20. So show your passion, okay? And with that, I'm going to give it to my friend Kyle, who's going to kickstart today's session. And everyone knows about Kyle, right? He has never heard of him. Kyle has been has been a featured illustrator. He did the Netflix series, The Stranger Things banner, which is being one of the top featuring banners throughout the country right now. And last year, Kyle did a photorealistic digital painting of Morgan Freeman, and that has around 15 million views on YouTube. He has been. Then I need I'm running out of energy. I did digital painting of Morgan Freeman. This was last year, and it has 15 million views on YouTube. He has been speaker at various conferences. He was speaker at Macworld. He was here. He was panelist last year, and this year he is the keynote speaker. He has a bunch of information for you guys. I think I'll just let Kyle go ahead.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, my name is Kyle, and I been doing mobile digital art pretty much since 2010. I'm just going to put this on stage because I always forget to do this at the end. I've got a website, which kyrilambert.com. I have some business cards if people want to take one as well at the end of the stage, at the end of this talk. And if you could also take a note of these are my Facebook pages, my Twitter page, and my Instagram. I'm new on Instagram. I still don't know what I'm doing on there. Basically, you can talk to me on any of these platforms, and my website has my email address. I'm quite happy to answer questions, talk to people. Everybody that I met here is awesome, so talk to me. Over the last 10 years, I've had a lot of really cool projects come along. Some of them have been iPad and did mobile digital art projects. Some have been just digital art projects. These are some of the clients I've worked with. I've done a lot of work with Apple over the last couple of years, which has been really cool because they have such a broad audience. I did a few projects for Paramount Studios, and most recently posted for Netflix. One thing, just because I'm working with really big clients, it's not anything different from what everybody in here is doing. I'm a self-taught artist. I was trained at university, but like, if you went to university in the UK, it's not that. It's more about learning about the art world. But I basically spent every day of my life in front of something, creating things. So this is my most recent project. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more at the end as a little case study, just showing how I took this from nothing all the way up to a finished poster that's on billboards. This is the finished poster, which again we'll talk about a little bit later on. So this here is a picture of me when I was old. I've never shared this with anybody. I
love the TV, man.
But this essentially was my first Wacom tablet. It was, I don't even know the make of it. It's this video painter thing. You basically used to plug it into the VHS cassette player on the TV, and you post at age 5, and I'm still doing it today. So this has been a long journey for me. This is my whole life, and I love what I do, and I'm hopefully today just going to show you a little bit about the things I've learned over the last couple of years doing what I do digitally, and just show you some of the projects I've done. So yeah, this is a picture of me when I was I think about 18, and this is before computers became a big part of my life. This is I used to work in the Apple retail stores, and this was just before I got hired there. And I was in university painting with oils. I really got into the idea of doing portraits. I'd drawn with pencil and crayons and everything you can imagine my whole life until I got to university, and then I started doing portraits and really started to push my abilities to capture people and techniques and things like that. And then I found oil paints, and it was like, holy crap, I can paint with color and do things like that look realistic. So I went into the deep end as I usually do, and this is a portrait of my mum. Tall, and this was done without a grid, and I figured out this really cool technique for like accurately painting detail on here. And this actually evolved, if you look at the timeline, into the Morgan Freeman painting that I did. In 2010, I was working at Apple, and they announced this tiny little device called the iPad, and everybody was just going crazy about this thing at Apple. They knew it was going to be big, they knew it was going to be the future. And I remember watching the keynote presentation being disappointed that there was no stylus and that it wasn't going to be able to run Photoshop and all this kind of thing. And they had a demonstration of the brushes application, and a guy drew this very loose portrait. And off the back of that, I thought, right, let's give it a go. So one of my friends actually imported one from the US because the UK didn't get it until like 3 months later. And on my break, I sat and drew for about an hour, and immediately decided that the day that it arrived in the UK, I was going to purchase one. And basically, it was going to be my mobile digital sketchbook. That's the way I saw it. For the iPad, I drew a whole bunch of things on there, and within a week, I thought, this is pretty cool. In that I could do realistic paintings on just like I used ago, I found a picture of Beyonce. I was listening to one of her albums at the time, and I thought it'd be kind of cool. I just painted this and I put it online, and it was one of the first examples of how you can use the iPad to create something. It creates quite a wave. Off the back of that, I got a bunch of work with Apple. This is, I've never really announced that I did this, but this is a piece that I did for Apple Retail. This balloon, the orangey, purpley balloon, was commissioned to be painted on Procreate, and it was hung in all of the Apple stores across the world. I've done a couple of notable projects that have got me a bunch of attention. This is a project I did called, is this accurate?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he's not connected now.
Hmm?
Sorry, we're just dealing with a tiny bit of feedback on here.
Yeah, is it okay now?
No, the same one. Hold on, guys, we're just dealing with the feedback issue. It's just.
Yes.
Right now?
Right.
How about
Yeah.
now? Okay. I'll just talk loud enough so that it cuts out, you can still hear me. This is a project I did. This was actually a gift for the director of Toy Story 3. And this was basically combining his favorite movie, which is The Shining, and the Toy Story characters. Here are some examples of some of the pieces that I did. And these were done on brushes again. There's little videos accompanying these. But this was really cool. This was just a very creative project that everybody loved. And this went viral a couple of times on the internet. And just an example of, I love movies, I love drawing and art, and you'll see there's a common theme through a lot of the work that I do. Is this a theme of like a cinematic vibe about what I do. One of my dreams has always been to do work for Pixar. This is a little project I did to, almost like a portfolio project that I sent to them. This piece actually isn't done on an iPad, but the preliminary sketches and exploration work was done on an iPad. And I just want to hopefully show you there's a range of work that I do. It's not just photorealistic paintings, it's not just portraits. There's a real mixture of stuff that you can create anything with these devices. So here's Morgan. Yeah, this made a big impact on my life in many ways. But this was a really cool project. Basically, the story behind this is that I was one of the first people to use the iPad to paint, and it was a very solitary thing, as I talked about yesterday. And I did a whole bunch of promotional stuff, and then I got hired by a bunch of really cool clients and didn't end up doing any iPad artwork for a long time. It was about 2 years I was away from doing iPad artwork. And then I got invited to Macworld in 2012, and I met a whole bunch of really cool artists there that had basically seen the work that I had done and then decided that iPad art was for them. And it made me think that I should probably do more videos to reach more people. And I was looking for an idea, and simultaneously Procreate, the app that I used to make this, contacted me about a new version that they'd been working on that had video feature. At the time, they didn't have video export, and I was using brushes, which kept me from using any other app. And they said, we've got video export, and we've got 4K resolution, so can you do something for us? And I was like, sure. So it wasn't this piece. I actually did a sample piece for them that they used in promotion of their new features. But in the middle of that painting, I was like, this is really cool. Like, this is next level. This is, you know, I didn't have a really good stylus at the time, so I was still using my finger to paint. But I could see the potential. The resolution was there to create something really detailed and epic. And I really thought that no one would care about iPad painting anymore, because that's released so many things already, and everybody else was kind of catching up now, and it was like, it just became a thing. And I thought, if I put this out, no one's going to care. So I dedicated a whole month to making this thing really, really, really realistic. And I thought, if I put this video out and it'll in some way reach people, and if it makes 5 people download the app and start using the iPad, then it's worth it. And lo and behold, I had no idea what I had in front of me, because I actually shared it with my friends on Facebook a day before I launched it, and it reached 1,000 views just from my friends sharing it with their friends and their friends. And I don't have that many friends, so to reach 1,000 a day, I knew I had something special, and the next day it reached 1 million, and then it went to 13 million within 2 days. So and it was really cool because it actually did what I wanted to do. It reached a lot of people. It got a conversation started about mobile digital art. It got a conversation about, you know, device is digital art. And it also made Procreate the #1 app in the US over Christmas, which basically means a lot of people bought it. And, you know, think about a piece of art, like what kind of, has any piece of art reached that kind of exposure in the media? I think it was a real phenomenon. Apple were really impressed, the Procreate developers were really impressed, and it caused a lot of controversy as well, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, because a lot of people didn't think it was real because no one could figure out how I'd done it. But anyway, so this is just some of this. If you haven't seen the video, this is just a little bit of a breakdown of the process, going from very loose strokes that were very carefully planted, and then adding details slowly and gradually, and then it's essentially a 3-minute video. It's on my website, which I gave you earlier.
How long did it take you?
It was about 1 month.
1 month.
I budgeted 2 weeks, and then I got completely carried away, and I spent every hour, every day working on this thing. So I guess I just want to talk a little bit about, I don't think anyone's really addressed this as to why iPad art is really taking off, but when they released the iPhone, there was a similar diagram to this that showed what smartphones were right now and what they are, what the iPhone was going to bring to the table. And basically this diagram here shows where a lot of digital painting apps on the desktop are right now, which is they are complicated, but they are really powerful. And because of that, only a small amount of people can use them to create something awesome. They take a lot of time to learn, and they're very complicated and detailed and require a lot of powerful equipment and expensive equipment. So when the iPad came out, it changed the shift of this diagram. If you look at this, this is the exact opposite. They were really super easy to use because you had to use your finger to operate them. But at the same time, the device wasn't very powerful, and the limitations of the finger and the buttons meant that they weren't that powerful, and you weren't able to create anything too spectacular. But over the last couple of years, with the improvements in the iPad and the improvements in the apps and the adoption of everybody, we've now reached this point now where the apps are really easy to use. Some of them are still complicated, but you know, it's up to you which level you want to get to. They're easy to use, but they're also incredibly powerful as well. And this tangent is just going to continue to increase as the device gets more capable. As you know, the Apple Pencil certainly has accelerated that if you're an iOS user. So this is really what's happening now, and this is why it's becoming a big deal. So I'm just going to show you a couple of projects of mine. These are essentially what I'm going to try and do a little demonstration. Nothing too in depth. It's only got an hour, and I've already talked way too long. But this is about 4 or 5 case studies that show you essentially how I use the iOS devices to use the iPad as a workflow. And it's not, I don't do all of my work on the iPad. I wouldn't consider myself an iPad artist or a mobile artist. I do some of my work on the iPad. I do some of my work on my iPhone. I do some of my work on my Mac. I use different applications. I'm a digital artist essentially, and I've painted with oils and stuff. So what I'm trying to show you here is that there's a workflow, and each of these apps and platforms can all cross-pollinate. Yeah. So this is a piece I did after the Morgan Freeman piece. It was actually for an article in the UK for how you could use an iPad and the Wacom stylus at the time before. So this is how it started. So these pieces aren't always, you know, beautiful to look at. I used to really struggle before digital to work in sketchbooks because I used to be so precious about how to draw. Because you've seen some of my work, it's very detailed. I used to bring that detail from the very beginning, and why that was an issue, my tutors used to like give me all kinds of hell about it because they used to look at my sketchbooks and I'd spend an hour just doing a sketch. And they say, just do 50 sketches, it doesn't matter, no one's going to care, and I couldn't do it. But in the last 10 years since I've been working digitally, I've freed incredibly because I don't have to share it with anybody. I can delete it. I don't have to tear it out and admit that I've got something wrong. And I can press undo. I can create 15 versions and only keep 3 of them. I think the digital revolution is that it allows you to be more flexible and creative. And this sketch here is one of about 15 that I did, very loose, really just trying to figure out what composition I wanted for this painting. Once I did that, using layers, I was then able to draw over the top of that and do a more tight, refined sketch where I was able to detail a little bit more about what the person would look like and what this creature would be in the background and all these kind of things. And then from there, I was able to then block in some basic colors, all again using layers. And then essentially from this point, I could then see what I wanted, and it was essentially just a rendering project, and then this is the finished illustration. So you can see there's like a journey there. That was all done in Procreate. Have to be just done in one app. This is a piece that I did back in the day when the iPad had just come out. I used Sketchbook Pro for the sketch on the left-hand side. I think I used brushes to do the color concept in the middle. And then I used Photoshop to add some of the texture and upscale this thing so it could go on a big poster on the right-hand side. So again, it started on the mobile where I wanted to do, and then before the iPad got really super capable, I was doing this thing on Photoshop as a way of finishing it. This is another piece. This was done for Macworld. This was printed out about the size that it is on there on the screen. These were the preliminary sketches. This was done in Adobe Ideas, which isn't an app anymore, but you saw the demonstration of Adobe Sketch yesterday. It's essentially its cousin. Adobe Ideas was the first vector sketching application that really had any power, and it was really cool. You could have this infinite canvas and just draw and draw and draw. So I used to use it as a sketchbook, like a big sheet of paper that you could just keep moving around and making things. So these were the developmental sketches. Again, even worse than the sketches you saw before at the top there, just really figuring out what zoom I wanted on the character, what the pose would be, how I could fill that square in an interesting way. And then honing down a color palette. This then evolved into a fully rendered, painted concept piece that, you know, this is the kind of stuff you would see on a movie poster or as a concept art movie. This was done in Photoshop. Again, all kind of layered with different things. I'll show you some of the techniques I used for layering in a little while. But I used photographs that I took in a trip to San Francisco. I used a friend of mine as a model to pose for the lighting, so I could get realistic lighting on there. I Googled every supermodel in the world to look for hair that looked fabulous. That was a really hard task. That's another example of a piece that went from the iPad all the way over to finished illustration. Something a little bit different here. This is a character design. This was, again, these first few were all done on the iPad and then brought over to Photoshop. Preliminary sketches were done in Adobe Ideas and I think brushes. Then I did the coloring in Sketchbook Pro and then took the final piece over to Photoshop and did the 3D stuff and the details. This is a piece that was done in Adobe Ideas again, and then finished off in Illustrator. So it doesn't always have to be a painting project. This is a 2D flat colored piece that, again, I sketched in Adobe Ideas. Spent weeks and weeks and weeks working on the caricatures because I'm not a caricature artist, so I had to really learn how to do that. And this is for the movie Eyes Wide Shut. I just really like the idea of doing something caricature like this. So this was sketched on the iPad, exported onto Illustrator. I recently got married last week. And of course I brought my own. So this is an invite that I did for our wedding. I wanted to do some little caricatures of me and my wife Aggie, and I used Procreate to little composition of us standing there on the wedding day in our little suits and dresses and things. And the whole idea was we had this nice venue with flowers and wooden decking, and it It was all very rural and pretty, and we wanted to convey that in the invite. So I did a sketch on Procreate. I then did the coloring for this in Photoshop and did the text and a few of the decorative elements in Illustrator. And just to show you this, the iPad doesn't have to stay on the iPad. This actually was then printed and then stitched into, hand stitched by me into invites, and then 50 of them. And then I actually used this as well to make into a 3D model that was made out of paper and all kinds of stuff. So that's an iPad painting all the way up to something physical and tangible that you can see. All right. So I'm going to give a demo now and just give you a slight overview of how I use Procreate specifically. But one of the things I like to stress a lot about what I do is that I'm not like a genius in one app. The workflow that I have really does transcend any app that you use. It's a very traditional workflow because I'm from a traditional background. I draw, and then in the digital world, I can create layers, so I can put my painting under the drawing. And then as I increase the painting more and more, I use my sketch more and more, and it transitions from a sketch into a painting. And I'll show you a little bit about that in a second. So bear with me while I unplug and replug and cause time. Wait, that never happens. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to be showing you in Procreate, but the reason I like Procreate more than anything else, I'm not here to sponsor them in any way, I'm just basically being honest. I like Procreate because it's similar to Photoshop, and I'm so well versed in Photoshop now that I needed an app that was familiar with that to be able to do similar work on the go. And I often send things backwards and forwards between the two apps, so I need something that has similar functionality, and Procreate has that. I've used Procreate since day one. They sent me a beta of it before it even reached release, and I didn't like it at the beginning because all it really had was brushes. It had these really cool brushes that you could make. You could make your own brush engine, but it didn't really have anything. It didn't have video features. It didn't really have anything that brushes had to offer. So I gave them some feedback and left it and didn't go near it until I did the modern agreement painting. And now it's where I live and breathe, and is in Procreate. And this is just the iceberg of some of the projects I've worked on here. So before I get into showing you how I did some of the poster artwork stuff, I'm going to show you a very quick demonstration of the techniques that I use. So the canvas size isn't particularly important here. I'll just do a square. So I want to just talk about a little technique that when I use Photoshop, I like having a big screen, and unlike the iPad on the desktop, you can have multiple applications open next to each other. On the iPad, you've always been in this window, and you're stuck in this one window. But with the latest iPad Pro, you have this split screen view, which means you can look at one thing while doing something else, which in the art world, in what we do, means you can be looking at reference photographs or inspiration or whatever it is you need to work while you're working on one side of the screen and then be working on the other. And that's invaluable for me, and it allows me to do a lot more on the iPad than ever before. So if nobody's done, I'll just kind of show you how this works. I use Photos for this mainly. You can use other painting apps. This is a piece from the Things TV show that I've just done work for, and this is just one of the layers. I open this up in Photos. This is the background. There's a whole bunch of different assets here that I could look at, but if I wanted to recreate this now, or I was trying to change it in some way, I could open this up, and then basically you finger in from the right-hand side, from your left-hand side, and it will open up the last app that you're using. Just by sliding in with your finger off the screen, back onto the screen, and then
showing on the screen. So you're in photo.
It doesn't show on the screen. I've had this problem before. I did a demonstration at Apple and the same thing happened. But, okay. Use your eyes. So, this feature is nothing new that I'm revealing today. It's on apple.com. It's a really widely known feature, but you just slide your finger from one side of the screen inwards and it will launch another app. You can pull this out as far as you wish. So I'm going to go 50-50 here. So I've got two apps now, side by side. So one of them is my reference, one of them is my painting. And now I have everything I need here. I don't have to keep looking up to another screen or piece of paper or whatever it is. It's called split screen view. Absolutely. So you open up the app that you would like on the left-hand side first. Opened up photos. It could be a photograph of a friend or whatever that you want to draw. You know, what you've done in any other app. It could be a website, it could be your email, anything. And then from the right-hand side, there is no screen. Place your finger and then just slide into the screen and you'll get a little handle. It's like a little grey little handle there. And if you keep pulling that, it opens up a new app area. And it happens to open up the last app you were in, and I was in Procreate, so I've now got photos or whatever, and then the app of choice. Now, if you happen to open up the wrong app, like if you open up your email and it opens up Safari or whatever, you can just slide down from the top in the same way, and then you get a choice of. Hang on, try and do this one-handed. There you go. You get a choice of apps. Just get one of the guys at some point to show you if you're struggling with this, but it'll show you all the different apps that you could potentially open. And I'm just going to choose Procreate. So now I have a 50-50 split view. Okay. Now, you're not going to be able to see me taking advantage of that on the screen, unfortunately, so I'm going to have to just open up my app full screen so you can see that. Okay, so here's Procreate now. I haven't planned on this, so I'm going to have to open something on my Mac, so just give me 1 second. Okay, so Procreate. This is a really powerful app, and people in the painting industry, like, it's become a really big part of professional users. Because of that, it has a high level of complexity. There's quite complicated to teach and learn and use. However, it's also very simple because it really is up to you how deep you want to get into this application. On the surface, it's very simple. The user interface is pretty much as simple as you can get. It has all of the basics on the top and on the side, and there's not really much more than you need from that, unless you want to go crazy. So, all I'm really going to be showing you today is which brushes I use for different parts of the process. And that's not rule. It's not a rule. Like that, it really is a very personal thing. Every style that I paint in, I don't stick to one style. I like to learn different styles. I like to experiment, try things. There's no go-to brush specifically, but there are a couple of things I'll recommend today. So you have your paintbrush at the top. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Procreate. You have an eraser, which you have access to the same brushes as you did in the paint palette. And then you have layers, which is a very critical part of the way I'm going to show you I do digital artwork. Layers is the deal breaker for me.
Kyle, do you name your layers?
5 or 6 layers, and then it gets complicated then, absolutely. I'm quite detail oriented about most things in my life, and layers is one of those things. In Photoshop, it can get quite intense. Like, I have folders with folders of layers, because when you're working on something like that poster, which I'll talk about later, you have maybe 200 layers. That client says on blue, you need to know where it is. You know? So Layers, it really just, at this level, when you're working on an iPad and you're just doing maybe a couple of layers, it's not important because you don't have to scroll or go searching, but it's good practice to name them because it's very easy to start working on the wrong layer. I've done it so many times. But I'm not going to be naming my layers today just because we've got 30 minutes left. So layers, and then the top right-hand corner is the color. And as we did yesterday, I've changed this to the classic color picker with the kind of square gradient. But again, that's not a specific requirement, that's just personal preference. The idea is it's going to be essentially a layered structure that I work in, and off the bat on Procreate you have a layer. It's not like you're going to work onto a white sheet. You have a transparent layer to work onto. So to start working here, it's essentially just picking the brush that you want to work with. You've chosen the canvas size. Again, that's very personal depending on what project you want. If you're going to go on a billboard, you need a really big canvas. If you're going to email it to someone or put it on the web, it doesn't need to be so big. It really just depends. The Procreate can create really high resolution artwork. It's around about 10,000 pixels by 7,000 if you want to do a poster aspect ratio, which is essentially what's allowed me to do this. I just want to say one thing really quickly while I remember, but I recently, obviously I got married, I went back to Hungary where my wife lives, and I had a weight allowance on my luggage, and I was only able to take a few things. So I was going to be 3 weeks away from my studio. And normally I would have taken my Wacom tablet, my Mac, a whole bunch of stuff. And this is the first time where I just took my iPad Pro. And that for me is worth mentioning because I'd never been able to do that before. And it's only really because of the Pencil and the Pro that I had something that was powerful enough where if a client emailed me with a deadline of 2 days and I couldn't go back to the States, Pro, you know, and that's basically the first time it's happened. So, because I think it's a big deal that mobile art on the go like that, and I'm talking about potentially big work that I would be disappointed if I couldn't complete. So anyway, so the first thing I do normally is I draw, and drawing traditionally has always been done with pencil. And if anything, if Procreate did one thing, I would want it to be the pencil, because the pencil brushes that come with Procreate are, in my opinion, some of the best. They have a really high resolution texture to them, and it just looks like pencil. And many people have commented on my Stranger Things poster, like, I've been shocked that it's digital. And a lot of that is down to the pencil brush, the pencil brushes that came with Procreate that I use to do my sketching. I play around with these brushes a little bit just to dial them in slightly. I actually have a palette of brushes that are just mine here that I just experiment with for each project. And you can see there's 3 brushes. There's a pencil sharp, pencil soft. And these are just different variations of the settings to do different types of line.
Do you customize your brush pencils, or do you?
Yes. I use pre-existing ones and then just change them slightly, because sometimes I want to like shade very softly. Sometimes I want really sharp, precise lines. So let's have a look at customizing brushes. Basically, you have all of these different menus with all the different brushes, and then each one of these you can dig deeper into. Now, this is where it gets a bit pro, where it gets a little bit complicated, where it gets a little bit overwhelming if you've not done this kind of stuff before. I wasn't planning on going in here on my talk, but essentially any of these brushes, you can tap on them once to activate them, and then tap on them again, and then you get the scary stuff, okay? A lot of it. And I've been doing this for a while in Photoshop, and I still don't know what all these files do. And you don't need to, because they don't all make things better.
Question. When you have set one that you like a lot, do you save it then in a special place?
Yeah, the default brushes can be reset at any time, so you can feel free to just break everything and then just save it again. But if you find one that you like, one of the things you can do is duplicate it, so that you get this new brush that you've made, but you can then go back to the original afterwards.
And you duplicate that how?
So to duplicate it, it gets a, this always grinds me because the delete button's very close to it, but you slide on the brush, and then just with your finger from right to left, and then you can either reset, duplicate, delete, they've got rid of the delete option. Okay, that's good. That's good.
You can't delete it,
The default ones.
Yeah.
That's good.
So you went to the right?
Yeah, you just tap on the brush on the right, select the button on the right hand side and slide over to the left, and you'll open up a little menu of a bit of a tip, use your finger for the menus. The pencil doesn't work too great on the appropriate menus, in all honesty. I still use my fingers for the menus. So yeah, you can duplicate, if you've made something really cool, you can duplicate it and then just reset the original afterwards, and then you can make a bunch of, that's what I did for mine. So you can see here there's different types of pencil brushes, you can experiment with them. One of the things I'd like to just point out here is my experience of working in the industry and working with clients that don't really like it when you don't produce awesome stuff every time. I don't do a lot of experimentation while I'm working. I kind of already know what I'm going to do when the client's on the clock.
Yeah.
And it's something that should really go all the way down to someone who's just starting out new as well, because most people open up these apps and they try and paint Morgan Freeman on the first go, and it's impossible. Like, I don't do that in any way with anything that I've done. If you get me a new app, I'd spend 3 days just scribbling with it. I had a sketch I wanted to show you, and I just realized I forgot it. But a friend of mine who introduced me to the iPad Pro, he bought one, and I hadn't bought it yet. And I went to stay with him, and he had an iPad Pro, and he left it in the guest bedroom, like, as a little gift. And I spent 5-6 hours. It got really late in the night playing with the thing, but I left the sketch on there, and he messaged me the next day, and he said, "What were you doing with the iPad Pro?" And I was like, "I was just playing." And he said, I was expecting something awesome that I could sell." And all I did was just open up every brush and just scribble with it. And it looked like something that some preschool kid would have done back, and that's basically what I was doing. I was getting a feel for the brush, getting a feel for the pencil, trying to feel the pressure sensitivity and figuring out which brushes work well, because there's different thresholds for each brush for the pressure sensitivity. And I was just playing with it, really, and I would have continued to do that for weeks before I tried to do something great, because what you have to do is get familiar with the tools that you're using. And a lot of these demonstrations that we've had at mDAC, I've watched all of them, and I've watched many in previous years as well. And most of the time in the class is spent with people going, "What was that button? Where's that menu? Da, 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 da." And it gets in the way of the art a lot. And people don't achieve what they could achieve because the technology's in the way and they're struggling. So I think it's really worth investing time learning the app before you try and create something and start frustrating yourself. So open the app, click on all the buttons, try all the brushes, try the sliders, make layers, make mess, and figure out what things work, what things you like, what things you could benefit from when you come to do something awesome. So then that one day where you take your iPad out and you want to draw something, there's no mystery anymore. You know which brushes you want to use, you know where the menus are, and it's all about just getting involved in the art. And it's the same with traditional tools. You need to learn how to mix color. You need to know what brushes you use, what amount of water to mix your watercolors with. It's the same thing. It's just in digital, people think they can just go in and it's ready to go. And you still have to have that learning process. So I realize I still haven't drawn a single thing yet. So pencil, default pencil. And then on the left-hand side, you have sliders. You have the top slider is the size of the brush. So I can draw with a really thick brush, or I can slide that down and draw with a thin brush. And you also have the pressure sensitivity with the Apple Pencil, where you can put it somewhere in the middle and press lightly to get a thin line, and then press harder to get a thicker line. and it behaves just like a real pencil would, as much as possible digitally. And then last of all, on the left-hand side, you have the opacity slider, which is kind of similar, but it basically just means you can control the amount of marks that you're making. Transparency, kind of like the translucency to each stroke. So this is great for shading, so that you can just be very gentle in the amount of line that's going onto the canvas each time. And for me, that looks like a pencil right there. That looks as much as a pencil as you can get. I don't know if it shows up on there. Yeah, there you go. But you can see the texture on that is pretty awesome. So you have an undo button below that, so you can undo any of these brush strokes. I don't know how important this undo is, but it's never really caused me too many problems.
Cable failure.
You okay?
Sorry, it fell over.
So the idea is we're working on a transparent layer here. So just to show you that, I can actually turn off the background here, and you can see that it's basically just floating brush strokes in space. And that's kind of how layers work. So this is really cool because you can paint under that later, or you can paint over it, or anything you want to do. I'm just going to turn that back on. There's this little dot next to each layer allows you to turn layers on and off. So I'm going to clear this because it's not exactly anything worth keeping. Drawing live is the worst thing on the planet, so I'm going to not spend too much more time doing this. I'm just going to just show you like how a pencil tool does look like a pencil. I'm just going to draw a very simple oval that could essentially turn into a face. But again, I don't draw very preciously anymore. This layering process allows me to be really loose and just really try and translate my idea into a very simple form. Okay.
It really does look like a pencil.
Yeah, and this is just choosing a pencil, sketching like you would normally, not treating it like some digital, scary object. It really is just sketching how you would normally. And I'm using, the opacity is quite low here, so I'm building this up very slowly. I don't really draw good from memory. I'm just doing something really quick so we can get going on this thing. I do a very loose sketch. I make sure I'm happy with it. I'm not too precious of it. If I don't like something, I can erase it really quickly. It doesn't really. I can do 15 of these and not really break a sweat.
The paper keeps falling on.
Oh, right, okay.
There's just a long.
So we've got a table malfunction here.
Table falling on it.
I don't want anyone to get crushed.
It's down.
I'm going to carry on because this isn't really that interesting. Not that, I'm talking about the sketches. People's lives are very interesting. But what I'm focusing on here is the idea. It's not making a good piece of art, it's just getting my idea down. Okay? So I'm going to leave it at that. So then, using this sketch now, there's two things I can do. I can start doing shading, or I could just clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to do a cleanup sketch now. So I'm going to do a new layer, just clicking the plus in the layers part. And I'm actually going to reduce the opacity of the sketch because it's a little bit strong for tracing, essentially. I'm tracing my own sketch. So to do this, it's not the most intuitive thing on the planet, but you tap two fingers on your layer, and you'll see there's now a blue bar across the top. And what this allows you to do is reduce the opacity of this layer. And the way to do that is once you tap two fingers on the layer, you then slide your finger from the right-hand side across to the left-hand side over the painting. And you'll see the blue bar will move with it. So just watch the blue bar. And you'll see the painting, the sketch is becoming more opaque. Less opaque, it's becoming transparent. Okay?
So that allows you to paint over what
It's like tracing paper now because it's less strong.
So how did you do that again, the steps?
So I go into the layers panel, whatever you want to call it, and then tap 2 fingers onto the layer, and it'll activate the blue bar.
In your layer.
In the layers panel, yeah. 2 fingers on the layer, just once, and then you can slide it over. There is also, I figured out a way of doing this in the effects, in the adjustments menu as well. You have layer opacity. I think people complain when they added that in. So that's the
second way.
that's the easier way if you can't remember the first. Okay. So then I've reduced the opacity of this now, which means it's a little bit weaker. So I can now trace over the top of it on my second layer. So I've added a new layer above it. To essentially do the same thing again, but with a little bit more control this time because I have a framework now to work on top of. I don't have to worry about the silhouette or where the eyes are. I'm just worrying about the actual clarity of the marks that I'm making. So I can really zoom in now and just focus on. I might increase the opacity of the brush here, just scale it down a bit. I can now get a bit more detail focused. Wonder about what the shape of the nose is more specifically. I can do eyelashes and things like this. I can really start adding this detail in a little bit more. And I don't feel stressed right now because I've already got this structure to work on top of, and I don't really, if it doesn't work, I can erase it and my original sketch is safe underneath. It's just a really freeing way. I do everything the most effortless way possible so that I can enjoy what I'm doing. I'm not going to do this whole thing, I just want to give you an idea of what these different steps are. Notice how I did it with eyes closed just to really speed this thing up. And sometimes it's difficult at this stage to figure out which detail that you added now and which is on the previous layer. So if you anytime I can just go back to this layer and just tap a little dot, and I can turn off the previous sketch and see what I've just achieved now on the new layer. And I'm like, oh right, well I've missed off the side of his face here, so I can turn it back on and then just draw that back in. And what you're basically trying to do here is get to the point where you've translated enough of this preliminary sketch into a more detailed sketch that you can remove the preliminary sketch and you don't need anymore. So let's just put the top of his hair in here. And what you'll see is that the final sketch, again I'm rushing really quickly here because I'm well over, but I can then turn off the other sketch and I've got my finished sketch. And then I'm going to have to move a little bit faster here because I've still got a bunch of slides I want to show you really quickly at the end. But I'm now going to create a new layer underneath the sketch, which I put here at the bottom. And then I'm going to use some brushes, and this is where you can use any brushes. It really doesn't matter what brush you want to use, this just depends on the style. I'm going to use, just to show you that it really doesn't have to be a complicated brush, I'm just going to use the soft airbrush. Every digital painting application on the planet. So let's do some very simple skin.
Are you on a new layer?
I am, yes. I'm on a new layer that's underneath the sketch. All right. So I'm just going to start off with. So this is just an airbrush now. I'm just going to try and block some color over really quickly here. So I'm going to start with a dark shaded color here, just to really block this in. And I'm going to move fast because you know how to paint. It's not about that, it's about technique.
What brush did you say you're using?
It doesn't matter. It's just an airbrush. It really doesn't matter what brush you use at this stage. You can use a paintbrush, an oil paint brush. You can do, because the sketch is there holding it all together. It really doesn't matter. use a bunch of different brushes here just to show you it really doesn't matter. So this is a splatter paintbrush, which I quite like. I really am not taking it that much care at all right now, mainly because of time, but mainly as well because it's a good example that if you do a good sketch, I follow it. I'm going to use a different brush again. I've not even used this brush before. I don't know what it's going to do, but I guess it's a bit big. And then the idea is now, if I want to, I can start zooming in and doing a bit more detail. I'm going to sample a color from here. A little bit. I just caught the clock and it's freaked me out, so in a second here. But this is just basic painting technique. It's nothing that I've invented or that I'm bringing to the table. It's just what everyone else is doing every day, but what's important is the layers here. Okay, let's just do in the dark hair. But that's blue. Let's use a different brush again. There we go, hair. I don't use a hair brush to do hair ever, but this is helping me speed this process up a little bit now. This is pain under pressure. Like, even my clients don't give me this kind of pressure, so. Anyway. All right. And then last of all, I'm just going to put some detail in just to show you that, just give you a very loose overview. This is all in one layer. You can see here I've just done this all in one layer. I'm going to just put some specularity on it. Let's get some white. Just going to put some highlights on this piece, just in the places you would expect. Okay. Oh, they're red on the ears. All right, that's a real rush. But anyway, the idea is once you've done enough of what I've just been showing you, you should be able to take the sketching away and it'll still look awesome. If you're following the structure of your sketch, this isn't going to look awesome, I can guarantee it. But if I turn the sketch off now, you can see that the essence of what will be this portrait is still there now. And if I just started painting some of the details of the mouth, I mean, I could even start doing that now over the top, just very quickly. If I wanted to put the details of the mouth in, I could start doing that over the top here. Where the eyes were. Just do some general outlines around the thing. Anyway, you get the idea. Okay? And that's my workflow. So I just want to do one case study. The last out of 2 minutes, which is crazy. I was like, I'm no way going to be able to talk for an hour. All right. We're back in the room. So that technique was basically essentially what I did on here. I actually did the majority of this stuff in Photoshop, the actual color work that I just showed you. That's that final stage where I was doing the color underneath on a separate layer. I actually did that in Photoshop, mainly because this had to be really, really big. And from the resolution, I could have done the whole thing on the iPad Pro. But this has ended up on billboards, which means high resolution, which means a lot of pixels. And the iPad Pro isn't quite there yet. It will be, and I can't wait. But I want to show you a little bit about how I did this, because this was the most awesome project I ever worked on. Here's a close-up of some. It's heavily traditional style, trying to make it look like it was painted with airbrushes. And Drew Struzan is the original artist that used to do all the 80s posters, some of the best posters I've ever seen. And I was basically studying the way he used to work and trying to channel that into a digital workflow. And this required about 3 weeks of development and testing and experimenting, making brushes, all the stuff I was telling you before. Before I started working on this for the client, I did all my homework and made it so that when they were like, this is what we want, I was able to say, great, let's start. That's the billboard that I'm hoping to see in LA next week. I think it's the first piece of commercial iteration that's been done on an iPad Pro that audience. It's actually on a bus in Melbourne, which it's like a metro thing, and I keep finding these things on the internet, places where it's ended up. It's the most awesome thing ever. But anyway, this is the workflow that I just showed you essentially. I did a black and white stage here. It helped speed up the coloring process, and it's actually kind of how it used to be done in the olden days. They used to use airbrushes to do black and white tonal work, and then they would just tint it with an airbrush afterwards. So I tried to mimic that technique as much as possible digitally. It's the same thing. This sketch was done on an iPad Pro. The whole thing was sketched on there in layers. I then did the shading work on there as well to essentially figure out where the focus would be and how it would be highlighted to make it look like a good cohesive image. And then once I got to that stage, I exported the thing to Photoshop and broke it up into several layers, each asset separately. I want to show you on the iPad actually this poster because I actually managed to port it over to here, the whole thing, but that's my website again if you want to see a little bit more of this stuff. Just Google me and you'll see Morgan Freeman's face come up.
How long did you spend on that big poster?
We worked on it since January. Up until early July, but that was mainly on figuring out what the story of the poster should be, what was all sketching, and then a month before do the poster, and then we settled on the one that the final layout.
Working on this poster, just curious. You say we.
It's, when I say we, I had an art director that was directing, basically translating the ideas that Netflix had. So they would speak to him, and then I would send it back to the art director would then send it to Netflix. They'd have meetings for weeks. And then I'd get a list of changes, and then that process happened over and over for weeks and weeks and weeks until they loved it. And then I didn't realize they were going to use it. I had a feeling they weren't even going to use it because there's a bit of a fear of digital artwork and a bit of fear of just painted artwork and advertising in general because it's an old thing. It's how posters used to be made. But this was an 80s show. It's set in the 80s. It felt relevant, and then they didn't use it. They released the show and they didn't use it, and then a week later they announced it with the posters. So,
Pixels.
sorry, there was one question in the back.
How did you break the assets up, and like how many different assets?
I basically used the lasso tool to cut each layer out, and then using Photoshop, I drew the bits that were missing. I'm being taken off the stage, but anyway, this is basically an overview of the layers here, and I can basically just turn these off very quickly just to show you how this thing was structured. You can see that each one of these things is a separate asset.
And you have how many layers? Like
This is condensed. This is me grouping them based on object, but each object has about 3 or 4 layers. Like this one. So, anyway, thank you.
Captain here the whole morning. Honestly, it was amazing. Thank you so much.
I'll take a break, actually.
Yeah, what happened again? We'll get him the whole morning. I'm going to have just very, like, no real, we're running a little bit, but it was so worth it. So if you could just hold it. So can we go without a break for this one? Can you just go to the second one? Okay, just keep the bathroom. Totally different presentation next, which is equally thrilling. So just get yourself sort of resituated. And just while we're there, I just want to, yeah, and then we'll start. So we'll start again in 2 minutes.
2 minutes, boss, okay?
It was amazing. You're gonna be so lovely. You do. I'm gonna introduce you. I'm gonna be. I'm gonna just my basic. Breath. Okay, I'm sort of in the midst, like you, yeah, I'm just gonna say that, like now you're gonna get the other side, and the other side, equally thrilling, equally inspiring, and it calls by a friend.
I want to shake your hand and hug you.
It comes
The winner.
oh, yes.
Right.
Can you just, who's gonna show us mine? 2 minutes, guys. You're in the interesting. I'm gonna do this. I watched the one that was, watched the, oh, it was the guy that did and you can get it out of video. Okay, so now what about we'll do that during so I'll just repeat this whole thing and say that we're going to be giving well, they're on the lot. We have 2 printouts for me. What is the card? Yeah, but it's a long line. Not the other one. So start Jeremy what we can crush into Jeremy cycle anything that's unique to like he'll go he'll have we can't stop prosecuting the need. Warm it up.
They can't control.
They turned it down and do a little more. They did turn it down. You're gonna have to a little bit later starting. What about this? You don't need as much anymore. Yeah, they're in a couple.
Yeah, I do. You know what? I think I've left it in the car. I think it must have happened. I don't mind. It's okay. It's just that kind of careful.
My daughter.
I thought it was my mom.
I'm gonna do this.
Can I take your picture with them real fast? You and them.
What we're gonna do is we're just gonna run the whole, everything. 15 minutes later. Mary? Is Mary in the house? Mary? So just to let you know, we are happily running late because that was an amazing presentation. So we're going to run the whole program just 15 minutes later, okay? Everything's going to run 15 minutes. I don't know if anybody heard me. Never mind. Thank you. And so I understand that some people are complaining about it still being a little cold. Not me, but we'll try and get it toned down a little bit of the next. But we have to get. I just want to get the next thing going first. But we have heard you. Shitty people. Okay, good. So just a little announcement. You've got two things in your bag. You've got a little flyer here about Bay Photo and how you can enroll, and the good things about it is Bay Photo are our printers and we love them. And you also got this, and sign up offers, which we really want you to do, to sign up on this thing so we can collect them from you. And what we really want you to do is emphasize that anyone who doesn't yet have a Bay Photo account should go online by completing the online form, which is bayphoto.com/account/new, and referencing Mobile Digital Art and Creativity Summit, mDAC, as a response to the question, how did you hear about Bay Photo? So we'd love you to do that. That's going to be a big encouragement to them to continue to support, our purpose, and they really have supported us and made it possible for us to do this exhibition and to print your work and do it in a very good style. So please do so. And when we come to the printing section, we will be giving out some product certificates like those of you that have received these products, we have a few that we'll be announcing. I just really want you, if you are going to use them, because we gave out several last year, and those that we gave to didn't use them. I think perhaps because we gave them out on the Friday night, not to painters. Anyway, so that's my paid political announcement. Now we can go on to more exciting things. I'm very, very, very happy to introduce the next speaker. He's here because I twisted his arm, and I met him. Maria found him online. His work is spectacular. He's a completely different aspect and workflow of using apps like Procreate, which he does use amongst others. And he's an artist, a painter, and he's more introduction. His name is Adam James Butcher. He's a Brit too, just by the way. And I'm very proud to announce him, and he's going to talk to you now. So.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's been a great summit so far. I've had such a great time. And thank you, Jeremy and Peggy, for being my guardian angels for the weekend. It's been amazing. Thank you. So today I'm going to talk about something slightly different. I have a process as well, but it's been really fascinating. Just looking and listening to the process of different artists, including Carl, presented, and I'm just always excited by that process. The applications, as Carl mentioned, is something that we can all in our own time. But the process, I've just become very excited by that. So I'm going to, those of you who haven't met me, I'm a fine artist who I specialize in using the iPad alongside other traditional mediums, paint and ceramics. But in fact, by embracing this new technology alongside traditional barriers, I'm able to create more than I ever did before. And so many doors have opened up for me before. The iPad performed a kind of my family and work there. So during this kind of long and exciting journey, touch with the fundamental nature of what I think creativity is all about. So in the context of this talk, I'll be speaking about the iPad simply because I use it a lot, but I'm aware that there's digital technologies that could easily be. The iPad is such a versatile tool that I've been to start telling you how you should use it in a technical sense. That's for you to explore and find your own paths, and thank goodness I have a formula. You've met so many experts during the summit that were able to share their knowledge, best applications, recording styles, and making accessories that are available. Rather, if I may, I'd like to reflect on why addicted to that wow factor you experience when you see incredibly technical drawing and painting. But we kind of know better, right? And there's a great spirit of experimentation in the room that I've kind of seen over the last. So when you get technically good at something, what I've noticed is that there's a danger of getting stuck. And for me, for myself at that time, creating art solely as an act of academic copying, I was in a place of zero change and zero challenge. It was a really comfortable place to be. But fortunately for myself, I had an amazing Rosemary, and she quickly saw through this kind of protective veneer, which is called fear. So out of what I understand to be just pure compassion, she just knocked the habit, this bad habit, straight out of me immediately. And I remember it vividly. I'm going to be part of the life drawing class for Jeremy later, but you can imagine that the conventional life drawing class, the model had been arranged in front of us, and I was preparing my easels and paper, and she came up, Rosemary came up with a little sly grin, and she just snatched the pencil out of my hand. And I just felt so exposed, thrown out to the unknown, because I was hiding behind these kind of materials that I was so used to. So she pointed to a large pile of metal, aluminum, aluminum sheets in the corner of the workshop. And these were her very words. Adam, you're never going to use a pencil again during this course as long as I'm your tutor. Some pliers, some metal scissors, and these are your new materials, get drawing. So by the way, I just got my own back recently because I went out to bought the iPad pencil, which I'm now totally addicted to. So anyone took a challenge of working with metal, and what followed was a quite a painful, kind of messy process. And quite a number of hours later, I created a kind of sculptural form, something like a shell of a human figure. And I've been forced to move around the space, sometimes right up to the model. In fact, I've become a mobile artist. And there were mobile artists before the mDAC, but I just wasn't digital yet. So my making process was somehow transformed. It had become fresh, alive, and inventive. I had to think hard. It was physically challenging and took lots of blood and guts, literally. I struggled to finish the piece. And I love the results, and I never turned back. When the element of performance kind of entered my world, and I then chose sculpture as a degree. And it maybe has something to do with the reason that I take every opportunity now not to be stuck in the studio, just kind of take when I'm on the move. And what did Rosemary teach me? Well, she taught me the simple but idea that pushing yourselves out of the comfort zone and embracing change was a necessary part of building a rigorous creative process. Aspect of what creativity is: taking risks, accepting the new, breaking out of our fears, and following the unknown. It builds resilience to change, which is an important responsibility I think we've got to take in part of our success as. So that experience kind of set up a life which quickly dispelled the old idea of this isolated artist being discovered by a collector one day in a gallery or a gallery. It took a little idea of struggling with a struggling artist genius, isolated in his cold studio, was more deeply embedded than I thought. So I did spend 2 years after my degree doing just that. And I passed my degree, but unfortunately in those days, they provided me with no tools or platforms of self-promotion, no structure for self-discipline, no understanding of how the art industry functioned. 2 years of going nowhere fast, I jumped at the opportunity to gain my newly qualified teacher status, which, to be honest, I went into teaching because I wasn't ready to to become a professional artist, and not in a negative way. It was my personal path, and I think that's kind of what makes me unique now. Both my father and my grandfather were teaching, and so it was kind of in the family. In fact, teaching and coaching and mentoring is I think, a very important part of anybody's practice. And we naturally want to give back when we start to achieve our artistic goals. So for 15 years, it was one of the greatest challenges of my life. In fact, I could argue that that's the reason why I'm here today in mDAC, because of my teaching career. So it was during this time that I became a specialist in using the latest iPad classroom as a kind of creative learning tool. And I was passionate about ensuring my students were up to date with the latest developments and opportunities, mainly because I wanted them to possess the skills needed to enter the art industry confidently, should they choose to. Digital medium was going to be a significant part of their future learning needs. So as head of art, I wanted to teach my students to become independent thinkers, not just a minority. And I didn't think the way art ed, certainly in the UK at the time, perceived. It was a low-ranking subject, with little value or respect. Community is an easy subject, one where children could kind of relax after an intensive lesson of algebra. But that's not my understanding. That wasn't my understanding of art at all. And there were lots of institutions where making was the sole creative process. And making, most kids love making. We all love making. Popular. So thinking independently, problem solving, taking risks, being intuitive, self-criticism, taking the path of self-discovery and expression was not an easy option. I wanted to help them understand that the creative process was a key skill for success and happiness in all fields. And this is how the iPad entered the classroom. There were, it was a neutral material in terms of its accessibility. And the iPad, and in those days we were fortunate to have iPads because it made the process of turning an idea into action really quite easy. For instance, one of my students, David, he loved maps and he wanted to create a set of drawings. He wanted to express his journey through his 5 senses. And to give you an example, he started using the layers in his iPad to the route home over a Google Map reference. And then he used a noise meter to register the decibels on each street corner. Stills and videos of the interesting people, the surface of the objects he came across on his journey. Each day, whilst traveling, he recorded the sounds he heard. He made notes of what he was eating and what he could smell. And needless to say, he had a great primary sources that he then could go back to the studio and produce these drawings. And he achieved a really high grade in his exam. In-depth personal research and scholarship, enjoyable and accessible. Something which previously achieved complete apathy, from students at the very mention of art analysis. It was, the kind of boos and kind of oohs and ahs that they used to get when I mentioned it. So soon, using the iPad, professional presentation became the norm, showing became fast and fun, and learners became the whole class. Students started confident to take on the challenges and the future expectations of the art industry. And it's super impressive when you see young artists already engaged in their own habits are revolutionizing the way art is being they experience the world of smartphones and tablets as opposed to savoring the tangible experience. The way millennials behave is different, but let's not be naive. Their experience is worse. It's just unique. And if I'm yeah, well, they took selfies for half an hour. So that they weren't actually interested so much in the Mona Lisa, but themselves in front of it. And then I got involved. So this made me really kind of start thinking differently about the way social media has affected the way we experience art. So let's get back to the soul of creativity. The creative process is often embedded in the urge for us to reflect, to play, to discover art, and where we fit into this kind of complex world. And I recently watched a series of interviews with the late David Bowie, and you know, he was a songwriter, and he described the making process that he went through. I thought was really interesting. So I quote him, he says, "It's weird. It's getting through it. It's the process. There's something volatile, emotive, that makes me quite angry about going through the process. I wouldn't say it was enjoyable, but the process turns my heart and mind to jelly. I can't really explain it." So I've always wondered, this is a kind of social dysfunction. It's an extraordinary thing to want to do in such rarefied terms. The more rational thing to do is to survive steadfastly and create a protective home and a warm, loving environment for one's family and to get food for them. Anything else is extra. Culture is extra. So I think it's true, you know, that's what we need to do, really. What we really need to do is to kind of eat, drink, have shelter to survive. But for some reason, we take this path, we have to take this path less traveled, and responding to the question of creativity and using this kind of clever reverse psychology. The thing that makes us human, we can't really do without, and this to find happiness. So he's right, you know, being creative is well, certainly in my experience and a lot of people I've spoken to, it's not a comfortable journey, is it? And it shouldn't be, really. I mean, it's incredibly rewarding in many ways. We are, and why we're here, but it's tough and it takes courage, as anything worthwhile does. Really creative people are receptive to change. New. They walk into the unknown. It can be painful, but that's what makes us human. So let's put the iPad into a bit of context with regards to the creative process. The iPad was originally developed as a reflection of the way our social habits developed. It was built as the ultimate social media tool. I picked up a quote actually from Steve Jobs when he first launched the iPad. And he said, the iPad creates an entire new category of devices that will connect users and content in a much more intimate and fun way than ever before. An isolated one, as it was in my parents' era. The joint experience now is now tied up in the act of sharing with our peers. But this is kind of the way that I've ended up here. You know, if I wasn't sharing, if my work wasn't all about sharing, I would never have been found and asked to come here. So but in California, certainly this part, Scott is more of an original painting or sculpture that can be made and experienced in a real time or place as opposed to a virtual environment. There was probably a junction at which every new art form was asked the same question. Or label right, of course. It's the process that's important, not the medium. So what makes a vigorous creative process fit into this? Hard way, you need to work harder than ever. Why should it be any different than my teaching job? I averaged 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40 hours. You need discipline, time management. You need a balance, specifically as an artist, doing the actual making alongside the PR. 80% making, 20% PR is a good, for me, a good balance. You need to record and share the work with an audience to get recognition and make sales. You need to become self-sufficient entrepreneur and eventually attract outside representation, but on your terms. So why is the iPad useful? Well, as a professional artist, and others in this room, it gives us instant access to online resources, visual journal. We can share and connect instantly to social media platforms, and it's our canvas and our painting tools. It's our office, our studio, our portfolio. I do my research on it personally. I have access to my mailing list. Most of my paintings now are done through video calling. And I'm connected on a global level. And as a painting and drawing medium, I particularly love, personally, it's immediacy, it's portability, and its color vibrancy. And I more accurately represent the vibrant way we experience visual seeing than say the oil medium. Really exciting. You know, the iPad, the colors are light itself. But like any other medium, you need to understand the pros and cons. A double-edged sword. I've had a kind of love-hate relationship with for a long time. We need to think about how we create value. I'm still fighting this kind of battle with my friends and family on a daily basis and iPads and what seems to be quite a negative and destructive way in which they're using it. And I know I constantly stop communicating with people because of the iPad, and it's a very fine line between them being creative on it and not. The talk that yesterday I was just looking at, it just made me think. Psychologist Barry Schwartz takes 10 choice, and in his estimation, choice is not made us freer, but more paralyzed, dissatisfied. He talks about how important it is to learn to focus and create less choice, less disappointment and regret, and therefore more happiness. You know, creatives need guidance on how to make these choices, but focus and individual practice that will touch their audience. What I made was to get help early. Three or 4 years ago, I contacted someone who was offering a huge difference in my career. So I hope that in this room we have an important role in helping others reflect on the times and use these tools to create value. So make sure tech serves you, and that strong practice means that you can also serve other artists. It's no coincidence then that artists, whether aspiring or professional, have been contacting me in response to my articles. Advice and support on how they might make a tool to take their practice to the next level. But mass distraction, the barriers and challenges they face are very real, and they're shared by many people. So many artists are feeling trapped, isolated, and confused. They often lack discipline, professional habits, or clarity. They can't always afford to starting up costs. They're physically challenged. They face numerous creative struggles in order to keep up with change, and they experience creative blocks in developing, recording, and sharing their story. But they may become restless and feel that they need to get out of the studio, and they may have retired early or changed their careers and now want to reconnect creativity. And honestly, I experienced that. I continue to experience these things, or have experienced these regularly, these different barriers regularly. I think many of us do. So if we choose to, the iPad and other mobile digital technologies can be used as powerful tools to overcome these creative barriers and allow you to spend most of your time making whatever the process is or involves. So through popular demand, I decided to set up a program called the iPad and the Creative Process, where I've started to provide one-to-one coaching as pilots. I'm coaching a limited number of aspiring amateur to professional artists. And these sessions have been really successful. I'm hoping that these pilots will turn into something a little bit more passive that can be downloaded over the next few years. probably it might. Um, so if we take a moment to reflect on how art is and will be made, whether it's bought and sold by future generations, and connect to some other artificial, and its accessibility as a creative making tool in the field of art education. And it's really closing the new tech gap between generations. I think it's some of you in the room, the more mature ones, who are already grandparents, and there's quite a few. How you come across to your children, to your grandchildren, or your children, you about the latest app? And I think in some ways I'm kind of way ahead of my own children in terms of my understanding. The social media side, maybe not so much. My daughter had to teach me about Snapchat the other day. I have no idea how to use it or what it was for. And she explained to me it might be a great alternative platform for me to share my process. And I found myself hating the words that came out. Platforms are overused, darling. I'm an expert. So obviously, when I realized how condescending that must have sounded, I went back and apologized immediately. And I made every effort to listen to her and taught me how to use it. And now, funnily enough, I'm quite excited to use this feature on Instagram, which just started. So the fast changing nature of the world of applications means that we're constantly being encouraged creativity in new ways. So together, I know we can help each other, and there isn't an age barrier at all anymore. So to sum up, in a world that's fast becoming a global community, I think that the way we communicate through art is and will change enormously within the next decade, moving exponentially to be leaders in exploring the potential of these new innovations and discoveries. Who knows what will replace the iPad? But I believe that through our enthusiasm and understanding of the mobile digital technology, artists such as ourselves will play a very important role in helping others to take advantage of the medium's full potential. So finally, I think that the mobile art movement will represent a key turning point in history when art became accessible to all. So I suppose my main message is this: we are part of the mobile art creativity movement today, to be its pioneers. However, this does come with some responsibility. Let's not get complacent or lazy like the artists before us who became safe and comfortable in this medium. The movement with its title should suggest a celebration of change and innovation. Let's celebrate the ability to move and embrace the fast-changing developments in new tech as exciting and potential new tools in the ongoing creative process. I just want to end on a quote by someone who wrote a great book, Kevin Kelly. It's a book called The 12 Inevitable Forces That Will Shape Our Lives. He says, I truly do believe that this is both the very best time in the history of the universe, as far as we can tell, to make something. Because the tools for creation have never been more easily gotten, they've never been cheaper, they've never been better, they've never been as diverse, and they truly make things more accessible. So if you want to make something that's been made already, like a book or a movie or a song, the tools to do that are just about free, which means almost anybody in the world can get their hands on it. We're on the cusp of all these very transformative technologies and trends that will produce more and opportunities in the next 50 years than in the past 50 years, as much as that's hard to believe. So it's a to be an artist, and have an amazing day. Thank you very much.
I'm going to have a table laid out so you can look at them because they're fine art prints. And then you'll have a chance to talk to him also about the potential of him. I'm definitely looking at using Adam as my coach because I want you to know that he's actually sort of broken through the barrier of becoming a successful artist, and I know a lot of us have questions like that. So he's going to be around to answer questions. So I think we should move ahead right now just because we've got a little bit to set up for Mary, and we'll start right at 11 with Mary. But I want to give a huge thank you to Adam for coming to talk to us. And he will be around and set up during the lunch period so that you can see his work and talk to him about specifically those of you that are interested in selling online, in actually sort of getting yourself out and being successful. Anyway, don't find out how to put all that. Did you hear me? Yeah. Not even music. See, I'm pretty good at talking to the back wall. Okay, good. So we're going to take literally a 5-minute break. Please be back here no later than 11 o'clock. We're going to divide up now into 2 sections. One is the iconography class in here, and the other will meet in the sculpture garden, which is with your plein air sketching. Okay? So those are the 2 start precisely at 11. You're going to meet in the sculpture garden. The painters will meet in the sculpture garden. No. Oh. Okay, meet Jeannie for plein air in the meeting room. I was going to have the whole meeting. So, how are you? How do I put myself in here? So I'll just get
Someday I'll see you.
Adam, he went out. He's going to the restroom. ये पढ़ेंगे व्हाइट वाले से
Hello. Yeah. That's good.
You put that mDAC on your lanyard so you don't have to hold it.
Yeah, so here we are in the. It's good. I was going to talk about that, about this. I mean, Sunday mornings are usually when I'm looking at my.
I know, so I guess that's the highlight of the Sundays.
Yeah.
when we're waiting. Right.
I think we should start. Jim put this thing on my neck, so I'm just gonna walk around for a little bit. Good morning, good morning. It's my happiness to come down here and be together with everybody. Hello. Because usually on Sunday mornings, when I'm in Talent, Oregon, which is a town of 6,000 people, where most people have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. And when I show it to them in my phone, they get kind of upset. And when I show it to them on my iPad, they get really weird looks on their faces. And so if I don't print the work, they don't know what I am doing. They just can't actually believe that you could make stuff on a mobile device like we're making. And so we've been hearing all kinds of people talking about that. And Sunday mornings, the way I don't go crazy, having been doing this now for 5 years, is on the App Whisper. Take notes today. On the appwhisper.com, Joanne Carter has been holding space to talk about mobile art for 6 or 7 years now. It's the place to get all the latest information about apps, to get interviews about people who are doing mobile art, to see new produced mobile art, and she has a Flickr group that you can submit to. And so every Sunday she chooses from images that have been submitted to the Flickr group and makes a showcase and puts it to music, and you get to see what people have been making in all different styles that week. And what's fascinating today is we have 3 people in the room who have worked on that show today. So Bobby, stand up, Bobby McMurray, who is the what do you call it? Editor. The editor of the app art on Facebook, and a big participant in the app group. And then Jim, where are you? Where'd you go? There you are. Jim Perdue has a piece on it, and Jim's been a mobile artist for quite a long time, and then I have a piece on it. So it's a wonderful thing to be in the room with the actual people, because I've never had a chance to meet Bobby before, and to be here with the rest of you. So I'm going to do something which everybody has been wasn't going to happen. So all day yesterday, I listened to people saying, well, this is a really really complex thing, but we're not asking you to do that. Well, I'm the one that's gonna say, this is a really complex thing, and we're gonna do that. So we're gonna do that. And I've been using iColorama for as long as it's been developing. So I've been part of the beta testing group. There are tools in it that I'm proud to say I helped develop because I insisted on having them. And Teresita, the Alonso Garitz, the developer, said, okay, that, you need that, and then that, and then in 2 weeks, there they would be. And Teresa Lentz is a big participant in that iColorama group also. So today, how many of you have used iColorama before? So that's good. And then how many literally, so my right brain helps recognize this, how many of you have not used iColorama before? Okay, so I'm going to say that's about a 60-40 split. So those of you who are iColorama users already, we start going, you would be so kind as to get up and help anybody that you see struggling. I would appreciate it because this is a complex app. Yeah, of course you can use your own. So those of you who did download, and those of you who are not familiar with the app, I hope you will just take one of your own images to work with right now, and one in particular of the images that I put of the 5, and I'll show you, and follow along with me, literally. If you are not familiar with the app, do what I'm doing. Now, any of the rest of you who have some facility with the app, you can take one of the images that you downloaded, or you can take 2 of your own images and go for it. I mean, we're gonna do some things, but we're gonna be doing a compositing process, which I like to say that I see like a photographer. I've been a photographer for a really long time. I see like a photographer, but I feel like a painter. And it's always been that way for me. When I first started paying attention to serious photography, who knows Jerry Uelsman? Anybody know Jerry Uelsman's work? Okay, so Jerry Uelsman was one of the first really serious photographers' work that I got to see in a museum, and I lost it. And because he made such beautiful black and white images of actual real stuff, the actual real stuff together in ways that it didn't occur in the natural setting. And the ways that he put things together were dreamlike. And they were deeply moving to me emotionally. And I realized, oh my God, I see like this guy sees. I don't just see regular stuff. I see regular stuff. And I went on lots of assignments and shot lots of straight photographs for lots of people. I've been a shooter for a very long time. But I also, when I am walking around in my own creative spirit, I see a lot of things, multiple things at the same time. And my imagination enters into my vision. And so iColorama is my favorite app of the universe because it allows me to take my photographs and really improve them, and then put them together with other photographs, or draw on them, or paint over them, or layer other things into them. And what we're going to do today is just take 2 simple photographs, and the process I'm going to show you with anything. So these are very simple images that we're going to work with, but I want you, while you're working, to be thinking about, okay, well now, I mean, when I'm seeing, what you'll see is when I'm seeing a beautiful flower and in the background, I might want to put another image with that flower and give it a really interesting background. We're going to do that today. And it's a simple process, and I don't want you to start going everywhere. If you're one of the new iColorama people, don't go everywhere, follow me. Because there are so many tools in this app that you'll get lost. So we're just going to do that part. Just for your information, I've been coaching mobile artists and helping answer questions for the last 4 years since I started working. So I have a little offering for you today, and that's if you want to know more about iColorama, please make sure that you come put your name and your best email up here. I'm working with a beta testing technology that allows me to, and you can see my iPad. I can be working on my iPad and see you, and I can be seeing your iPad. So when you're in a ditch about something, you could connect with me and I could help you work through it. And I get to offer you an incredible discount on that. So anyway, if you're interested in going further with all that, let me know. Okay. So, to start with, what happened? Sumit, are you here? Siobhan, are we here? There, okay, good. Okay, so, there you are. Okay, so I want you to have much more of an opportunity to work than I want you to know all about me. Some of you already know about my work. I've been doing this for a long time. If you want to know more about my work, go to iColorama.com. That's my blog site. I also have another site where I share other people's work that's called The Joy of Iconography. So these are both Tumblr blogs with pages built behind them. And if you have a Tumblr account, anybody do Tumblr? Yeah. Good. So if you're making mobile art, make sure that you follow me on Tumblr, because then I'll see you in my newsfeed and I share people's work on Joy of Iconography. So that's there. You can find out all about me later. Today's about you. So let's go to iColorama. So when you first open iColorama, nothing's there except these menu structures. And if you're going to start with an image, you're going to start a photo, and you this kind of process, I want you to start with whatever it is that you want on the bottom. So what we're going to do is something that looks like this, those of you who are following along with me. Ooh, right. Can I make this go down?
They're outside, Mary. I think
Outside.
Outside?
Right there, right there.
Is that okay?
Better.
Is that all right? Because you can see your screens. Okay. Okay, so we're going to make something like this. And this was made from these two images. So this image, which was just a straight, not even very high resolution black and white shot using Camera Plus. It was Camera Plus, and then I converted it to black. Of a little, I know. Pernicum. And so this is just in my neighbor's yard when I'm walking the dog, and I just shoot this. Shadow, because it's late in the day, and the shadow is fine, but it's not. I started looking and I thought, I want something else with this. So then this, and you've seen, those of you who downloaded these images, this is one of the images that I gave you to work with. If you can, if you have downloaded them.
You want that another one?
You can get whatever you want.
A texture, essentially.
A texture, exactly, a texture. And if you are going to work with me in black and white, and if you're not, go ahead and work with color, and then it'll be a little pieces together. But it's okay. It's a fence that was outside my room when I was teaching how to wild. The shadows were there, and that stuff was there, and I just thought, I'm going to use this sometime.
Resolution.
But you mostly always open at the top of the resolution as soon as you're opening. So when you get an image from your library, I want to push the original image for this, because this is what happens when you first open it up. Here. My iPad will reach. Again, there's a lot of things to do in iColorama, but we're not going to do them all today. We're just going to do this. So in effects, you're going to go to blend, which is the first thing on the menu on the left. Go to blend, suddenly on the bottom.
Are we in the texture or the image? Because you're in the image.
Image. I'm going to use this in the back, and I'm going to put something over the top. Here, we're going to go to blend, and it's like, okay, there it is. Over in the bottom corner, all the way in the right. Can you guys see? In the bottom are presets, in the bottom right-hand corner, so touch that. And you're going to get all the different blend modes spitting up here. So normal, multiply, overlay, every conceivable kind of blend mode. We're going to stay simple because we're going to use a mask. So we're just going to stay with the normal blend mode. Blending images in with other modes, you're going to get all other kinds of effects, and it's just a lovely process which can keep you enthralled for hours. But today we're just going to do this. It's like, okay, blend, we'll blend what? So the next says photo. Touch the photo, and then go get your second image that you're going to put into this world. So in this instance, for me, I'm going to go get this. So it comes in a little, in whatever. Brightness or darkness, change its saturation if I'm using color. Alter. Pardon me, it doesn't have a redo. It does, but at this point, and deal with deal with whatever you're getting. Okay, so you can go in settings, but you can also rotate the image. So the rotating slider is down on the bottom. It doesn't have to be straight on. It can be, and you also don't have to have and take a piece of it over the top of your whole underlying image using two fingers. Now, when I'm just mode to begin with, I can slide around this top image and nothing's happening to the bottom image because all I'm doing is bringing it in. So I'm not going to rotate this one for myself. If you need to do it so that it fits exactly over the bottom one, there's in the bottom on this next to photo that says fit. So touch fit and it will automatically fit it to the underlying image. I fit, yes. Now, when you see that blue, it means it's active. When you don't see it blue, it's not active. All of the tools in the menu light up in various ways to let you know what's on and what's not on. So pay attention to what isn't white in the menu because it will tell you where you are. Right now, I'm just going to have it fill. Now, the way it doesn't, you can't tell that my other image is under there. So what am I going to do? I could shrink it, good idea, but instead, I'm going to lower the opacity to the underneath it. So here, I just knew in my mind when I pulled up this particular image that I wanted to take some of the light. I'm painting with light. I mean, that's what folks are painting with light. So I'm taking some of the light area up here at the top with these that came through the trees, and I want to keep that. I also want so lower the opacity a little bit. Now, go over to the left side. Paint, we have a brush and we have an eraser. So we're going to go back in the negative. Parts, when we paint, we're getting rid of what's on the top layer, the squirrely part. And when we erase, we're restoring what's on the top brush. So in your brush tools, right next to the.
How did you get your toolbar?
Touch the very end by limits, and you can drag it up and down. And those of you, this is a really good time. Those of you who are iColorama people, help us. And I can move it wherever I want to move it. It's like that little black part is a handle. Okay, so now it's there, and I'm in that tool panel, and I'm going to go to brush. Now, iColorama has 65 million brushes. I don't know how many brushes it has. I mean, so many brushes. You can get your Photoshop brushes and bring them in. You can go download other people's brushes from other places. You can use all kinds of brushes. And today, we're just going to use a soft, stable brush. So the groups of brushes, when they first come up, groups is blue. And these are all groups of brushes that are default with the app. There's no extra brushes in here. These are groups of brushes. So I'm just going to pick the top one and turn it blue, which is just a soft, stable brush. And then I'm going to touch single over here at the top. And when I touch single, these are all the soft, stable behaving brushes I could use. And they're all kinds of shapes. Don't get excited. Just pick the top left. Pick the top left. Keep it simple. So the soft, stable brush is great for almost all masking unless you're doing a digital thing. So for what I'm showing you right now, you're just always going to go there. So as soon as we've got that, then we can get out of there. We just touch anywhere on the screen. Set next to the brushes. And brush. In this case, I don't want the size to vary very much. Pull the slider over on size variation. You just a hard edge round thing. I'm not hard edge, but a round shape, and you don't want that. So you want a little size variation. So it's going to behave like round pull up. And then you can also go into adjust. And full opacity allows you to see the brush operating with at you're using. I want it to be full opacity to do this. Strokes, and I don't want to have to go undo all the time. So I'd rather build it up, just like when Kyle's talking about building up the texture, I'd rather build up the mask. And I'm going to bring the opacity down just a little bit. The opacity vary, and I'm not going to worry about limits. So,
Mary,
copy it.
So the top is opacity and then the bottom is full opacity. What is?
It's full opacity of what the brush could do.
Okay.
And so opacity, the top opacity is full, and this is how the full brush could behave. So if you want it to behave at its, pull it all the way up. Here in this instance, I don't want it to be that strong. And just, again, touch on the screen to get rid of the tools outside your artwork. We've got a brush. We can see the size of the brush. Right now, we can't see the size of the brush. It should be showing me the size of the brush. You're dragging yours, are you seeing your? Wow. Okay, to start with. Now, while we do this, you can use your finger, you can use your stylus. I'm going to use my pencil when I'm into it, but if you don't have a stylus to start doing fine detail, the important thing to understand is the zoom move that's above the brush. Zoom move, the blue is still, the brush mask is still active. Move, now I can both images and size them up or size them down with 2 fingers. Zoom move. And you know that zoom move is on. Close, you need to zoom in or out. And if we're going to start going around the edges of the flower here, you're going to really need to zoom in. If you're using a stylus, you have a little more control. If I want to start doing something to do this mask thing, and I've got it, I don't even want to zoom in to start with, but I've got it like this. If I start trying mask on, try it. Try using your finger. 0 happens. It happens because you can't paint in zoom move. So touch again, turn off the blue, and now I'm going to take my soft brush and I'm using my finger. And I'm going back, I am right now, when I'm making this mask. And what are you seeing now that I'm masking this? Which was black. The background was black.
Nothing is happening on mine.
Turn off zoom move. Are you doing your brush mask?
Yeah.
Who else is having nothing happening? Did you select your brush? Have you selected paint up in the top corner? Okay, select paint on the brush menu, I mean on the mask menu, and then start painting. Do you have two images?
Maybe I have my layers reversed.
Perhaps you do. So you might need to, and then go back to, if this happens to any of the rest of you, let's just do this. I'm not going to apply this. I'm going to back up. So I'm going to go back to Effects Blend. I just got rid of my top image. Here to Photo in the bottom corner. I go get what I'm putting on top. Did you get it? I'm going to hit fill. I'm going back to brush mask. Now, if I start this again, the one tricky thing, and we all sort of petition Terracita all the time to do this. Just because you already selected your brushes and come back in here again in the brush mask, you want to check to be sure that you've still got the group that you want and the single that you want, or you might end up with some other brush by default and it won't act the way you want it to act. So just check your brush again if you come back out. Now, like I said, I'm just taking my brush holy mackerel, I'm having the same thing you are. Oh, turn off fill. Hello. Turn off fill. Oh. Why am I having no painting?
Have zoom move on.
I know, but I turned it off. There we go. There we go.
So you turned off, so Phil's on?
Yeah, Phil's on. So here, and I'm going to zoom move so we can see what I'm doing. As I'm painting with my soft brush, I am obliterating the top image when I'm painting with the paintbrush. If I want to restore parts of the top image, what would I do? What would you imagine? Erase, yes. So I'm now going to stop painting and erase. And when I go into erase, I can bring back in the light. Okay, now I'm just doing this in a rough way. So I want those parts of the texture that I've got on the surface to show. Now I don't want them to show all over the flower, and I don't want them to show all over the leaves. So I'm going to go back and paint and erase and bring the detail that I want back to paint. And I want to get the texture off the whatever is on the surface. On the flower. Voila. Texture goes away. Very rough way, don't worry about that because you're going to go back in a fine way and not have all these dark shadows. But I want my leaves back. I want the edges of my leaves. I want this leaf whatever your composition is. So I want these darknesses of the leaf to come back, and I want no texture on the flower. Now, you can see, this is to go back to Bobby's question about the brush, because this is, as you're doing this, I want you to have control so you can do multiple layers. But remember when we did the brush, the setup, and she asked me the question about opacity and full opacity? I've got full opacity drawn down. Now I'm going to pull it all the way back up. That's in the settings on the brush, in the brush menu. Just open settings, there's basic, and then there's adjust. So I want the brush, at this point, I want the brush to give me everything it can, because it's acting like a removing device. And I don't want any texture on the flower. Okay, now, while you're working, you can take the opacity slider on the bottom, and this is the opacity of the top image. So you can slide this back and forth to see what you've actually got to work with underneath, and know that you're not going to save it in these ways until you get to the end. So this is just a viewing device. The opacity is there for you to see what you're doing underneath. So if you're painting one image into another image, you're going to be sliding your opacity back and forth depending on, unless you're trying to do a cutout, like literally put one thing on top of something else. But when I'm doing these kinds of images like this, I am doing multiple layers of images, painting them into each other. And this process is not just painting the color, it's painting the image into another image. So use your opacity. Yeah?
You're using the word layer. Is there a layer on here anywhere?
What? No, but you're blending, so there have to be two layers. You're blending one image with another image.
Have a layer that you
No.
see as a little icon.
No, no, no. Yes.
Is there an undo? Can I go back?
There is an undo, and don't undo right now. In a minute, I'll show you all of those functions. Don't undo right now. The way to undo what you're doing in this space is to go back and forth between the paint and the eraser. So if I go to it, like there's too much darkness around this flower, so that means I'm going to go to the eraser, and I'm going to come back in and get rid of, now I need to make my brush a lot smaller, and I also need to use zoom move. So I'm just coming back in with the erase, and I have to turn zoom move off to work, and getting close. This brush needs to get smaller. Getting close. So if you've done something in this world, you really don't want to undo. You want to just go back and forth between the paintbrush and the eraser. And if it's not working like what you want, go do it again, paint it again. So here, I don't want that that light area to be compromised. And I also don't want that shadow, in this instance, so tight, so dark. Now, you don't have to have a stylus to do this, but man, do I love my pencil. Yeah. Since the pencil came out, I am such a happy girl. It's just a divine stylus. All right, now, that shadow that's on the bottom of this flower to begin with is there. Now, I can't get rid of that shadow because it's in the image. I can use a retouching tool and get rid of that shadow if I don't want it. But this part and this part are, because I'm compositing. So I can go back in with my eraser, and I'm going to zoom move so I can see what I'm doing. And get rid of that. So this is the part where Jerry Yulesman, and when I was first in the darkroom, I've been a photographer for a really long time. And when I was first in the darkroom, Jerry Yulesman used to have 12 enlargers set up. And he would take negatives in every different enlarger, and he moves piece from one piece and exposes part of the paper and masks the rest of it, and then exposes part of the paper and masks the rest of it, exposes part of the paper and masks the rest of it. It was just amazing. And we can just do it this way. And you can go put another image in here if you want to, mask in an area, and go put another image in. God, it's divine. It's divine. So I'm going to go over here, get this shadow looking more like it ought to be. Now, I have lost my part of this over here, getting too excited. So I can just switch modes, go back to paint, restore that part of the image, go back to erase. It's got too much shadow. Use my zoom move so I can see what I'm doing. Turn it off, and then come in with a nice small brush. Just have a little shadow. Now, when I put the maximum zoom on the brush again, so that I could actually get rid of all the texture on the flower, I want all of that texture off. But then when I go to actually composite the two images together, you don't want the flower to look like it's stuck on the screen. So it's just, this is the part where you're painting. You want the flower to look like it might look in real life if it were casting a shadow of some kind on this, slight shadow on this background. So then, in order to do that and not have a hard edge, you're going to go back into your settings, opacity. So you're not ever going to be at 100% with the brush, and it's like using an airbrush when you do it this way. Stop. Okay, and in whatever way you're doing it for yourself, I'm just going to gently, it's even not even gently enough. Bring my brush down, bring my opacity down even more as I'm painting. And just stroke along the edge here and build up a little. I brought it down too much. Build up a little shadow. And I don't want to get crazy with this. I just want to show you when you're actually, so see here where I was just working, you want something, if you're going to take something that's lit in one setting, and black and white is an easy way to work because then you don't have to worry about the color issues. But if you're going to take something that's lit in one setting and put it into a place where something was lit differently, you have to actually think about, okay, if you're adding this element, how would it be lighted in relation to its background? And restore it. So otherwise this flower is just going to be sticking on there. You know this, you're painters. But those of you who are photographers may not be thinking about these kind of things. So it's important when you start compositing images together that you think about it. So I'm going to just zoom back here. Let's say I'm totally happy with this. I'm not, but let's say I'm totally happy with this. When you're in iColorama, you're going to do two different things. You're going to apply the work that you've done, which is in the top corner on the right. And if you don't apply everything you just did, if you change your mind and go somewhere else, it's all over. So make sure that you apply. And it turns blue, and then a little clock will say wait. All right, so now in iColorama,